Okay, so transactional analysis is a way of looking at our communication or our interaction. Okay, so it's like a series of transactions when two people are communicating. Okay, it's like a series of transactions that taking place. Okay, so one person talks, okay, then another person talks, and so on. It's like a transactions. Okay, so by observing like people and how they basically interact with each other. Okay, a person may interact like differently based on if the person is interacting with, let's say, a child, with his coworker, or let's say with his or her parents. Okay, so this psychiatrist, okay, Eric Berne, he developed this theory, transactional analysis, in the 1950s. Okay, to account for this the how the our like a different we have this different like a egoic states within us. I'll go in detail about the ego and different states that is in a person. Okay, so he saw that when people are interacting with each other, okay, the same person, they are like displaying different emotional states or ego states, okay, when interacting with each other, and that's how he developed this theory. Okay, so this theory kind of like it helps us get some idea about why people kind of behave differently when they interact with different people. Okay, all right. Okay, so we have this sense of self. Okay, so you are a person. Okay, let's say Amantika, you are a person. Okay, so after like a growing up, okay, up to now in your life, you have learned so many things in life. Okay, different experiences, you have gone through different phases in life, so they all make up your sense of self, who you are. Okay, you have learned over the years to form that self identity. Okay, that's what is called ego here. Okay, so the normal definition of ego, we call it like a pride, like you have an ego like that. So here, the definition of ego is your sense of self. Okay, so you are a person. Okay, you could be, let's say, Praveen, Angel, Priyanka. Okay, so you have this sense of self. So when you look in a mirror, okay, you see that person. Okay, so it's like that person is like a hardware of like a computer, and there is like a something programming going on inside of us. Okay, that gives us our sense of identity. Okay, so I am this, I am that. Okay, I'm a student, I'm a teacher. Okay, I am a parent. So we have this sense of this programming. Okay, this sense of self-identity, and that's what is the term ego here is. Okay, and the ego is basically the collective self of all of our life experiences. Okay, from the moment we're born. Okay, so after like going through like a primary schooling, like after interacting with your neighbors, families. Okay, so all of these experiences help to shape your egoic, your that sense of identity or ego. All right, and also your ego, like your experience, life experiences, like basically affect how you deal with different situations as well. So if an event is happening in front of, let's say, a group of people, okay, the way people take that event, same event, could be different based on based on people. Okay, and this is all because of their individual ego states or their self identities. All right. Okay. Okay, so let's look at some of the psychological terms here. Okay, so the first term we're gonna look at is script. Okay, so this is like a in like our programming that's going on within us. Again, this programming is affected by how we grew up. Okay, so the different like life experiences that we experience. Okay, so basically a person can display three different kinds of scripts. Okay, so in a sense, like for a same event, people can show, basically people can play three different scripts in their mind. Okay, so the first is the winner script. Okay, so basically, this like a positive or winning attitude that you have. Okay, so maybe a person grew up with experiencing to have this this winning script, okay, in their mind. Okay, so the attitude they have towards the world is that of a winner. Okay, I can do it. Okay, I'm able to do it. Okay, I can handle it. All of these scripts a person can have. Okay, the second kind of script is the loser script. Okay, this is something that, okay, I'm not really good at it. Okay, I may fail. I'm not really suitable for that. So these are the personal scripts that a person may have depending on how that person grew up. Okay, so the person probably grew up in like a family with the parents who themselves like subjected their kids to the loser scripts. Okay, you can't do that. You cannot talk to that all of these scripts. The parents program the child, or the person like growing up experience this loser script from other people. Okay, that's how maybe the person started having that the script. The third script type is the non-winner or non-loser. It's a neutral uh, script. Okay, so in a sense, like, it's okay. Okay, if this thing happens, it's okay. Okay, so win or lose, it's okay. All right, so you may have this time, people may have this type of neutral script going on as well. Okay, so in a sense, the same event, people could play different scripts in their mind. Okay, so again, like presentation, you guys brought up about presentation. Okay, so maybe before in your life experiences, in your life, you didn't really have good experience with presentation. Okay, so you kind of like have like a hesitation when it comes to talking before the class. Okay, so I'm not saying you are like that in a sense. It's just because of your life experience that you tend to have that script now playing in your head, just like a record player. Okay, every time you're encountered with that situation, you play that record. So you want to change that script. Okay, all right, from, let's say, from the loser script to maybe winner script. All right, okay. Okay, another term, psychological term, is stroke. Okay, so you guys have this, needs, right? Your body needs like food, right? Like clothes when you're like a cold, is like a bed, like sleep and all that. So ego, your that identity, self-identity, has some need as well. Okay, it's just like a food to your physical body. Your ego needs strokes. Okay, so basically, if you want to, like, if you're accepting stroke from others, you are expecting positive strokes, okay, for your self identity, for your ego. But if you are like giving that stroke to others, we normally tend to give negative strokes. Okay, so ego, it likes to like basically bathe in self gratification in a sense. Okay, but when it comes to basically doing the same for others, we normally don't like to do that. Okay, when I say we, I'm talking about our ego, our sense of identity. Okay, so we have this so our ego basically likes positive strokes. Okay, but doesn't like negative strokes. Okay, so for example, we like compliments. Okay, so growing up, we like compliments. We like, for example, we like getting like a gift. Okay, we like encouragement. Okay, and all that. Okay, these are the positive strokes. Okay, these are like positive, good food for our ego. Okay, and another type of stroke is negative stroke. Okay, these are some of the things that you don't like getting. So when I say we, our ego doesn't like getting. For example, criticism. Okay, even the criticism could be, let's say, constructive one, but we still don't feel good inside. Okay, so when during the presentation, let's say if you get a remark or feedback saying, you could have improved on this, deep down, like if you really analyze it, you could say, okay, really, I could work on that and improve on the next time I'm giving the same, like next time I'm giving presentation. But your ego doesn't really like that, you know? It kind of feels hurt, all right? Because that is negative stroke. Okay. However, the nature of ego is like that. It likes to give the negative stroke for other people. Okay, so you can see in your like a circle as well. Okay, positive food you like, negative food you don't like. You like giving to others. Okay, so those people who are emotionally intelligent, Okay, they kind of understand, they learn not to give into positive stroke. Okay, so you get compliment, it's okay. Okay, so you don't want to spend too much time like basically bathing in the light of that positive stroke. Okay, if you get negative stroke, it's okay as well. Okay, it's an opportunity to basically become better, right? So that's an aspect of those people who are emotionally intelligent. Okay, so maybe you can learn to do that. Okay, next time you receive some compliment, okay, so just handle it appropriately. Okay, okay, all right, so let's look at some of the ego states. Okay, so ego states could be one of the three ego states, and these are all within us. Okay, all of us, like you guys individually, have these three emotional state or these ego states within you. Okay, so I'm not talking about like a, when I say child ego state, I'm not talking about when you were, let's say, 6 years old or 7 years old. Still now, you may be like a 20 some years old or like however years maybe, maybe, you have these, there's these ego states within you right now, basically affecting your life, affecting your interaction with others, and how you experience this world. Okay, so it is all within us, and you will kind of like have more idea when we talk about the how these different ego states interact in our basically communication or interaction with other people. Okay, so the first ego state, the parent ego state. Okay, don't get confused with the word parent-child. Okay, so basically the parent ego state. Okay, these are the ego state that you basically learn from your like when growing up, when you were a little kid. Okay, so how your parents dealt with you, like how your parents like behaved with you or behaved in front of you. So these are the programming that you kind of these are the programming that you play now. Basically, these are the qualities or properties of parent ego state. Okay, so if your parents were very supportive of you, supportive of you, loving and caring and all that. So your apparent ego state will reflect that. Your parent ego state will be like a carbon copy of basically how you experience your childhood. Okay, so the other aspect is if you grew up in like a like a dysfunctional family, or if you didn't have a good childhood. Okay, so your parents were really like a critical, like always kind of like a taking things negatively, or not really appreciative of even like you or good things, then you tend to have that kind of like a parent ego state within you. Okay, so one is positive if you grew up in like a positive home, or if your childhood was like that. Another is like negative. Okay, it's like opposite things, and these are the parent ego states types. The second ego type is the, or let me cover the child ego state. Okay, so these are the behaviors, thoughts, and feelings that is replayed from your childhood. Okay, so how you reacted in your childhood. Okay, these are the same scripts, in a sense, the same programming that your child ego state tend to like play now. Okay, so for example, if you grew up like in a like a very kind of like an open and free family. Okay, your parents like a very supportive and so on, so you tend to show that child ego state still now. Okay, so for example, if you like if you grew up in a family where your parents kind of like like a spoiled you. Okay, well, like you ask even before you ask something, it was provided to you. Okay, so that same child ego state would kind of play now as well. Okay, in your personality, or you tend to show that child ego state now. Okay, or if you're like the behaviors that you experience. Okay, how did you behave during your childhood, that tends to kind of like your child ego state tends to follow that still now. Okay, so those are like parents ego state, how your parents behave, child ego state, how you actually behaved. Okay, so that programming is still there within you, within your psyche. All right, within that the ego states within you. Okay, all right. So ego states is like a layers and layers of experiences that you have from the moment you were born until now and going forward. It takes on that, just like have you guys seen trees, when they're cut, trees are cut, you could see rings in the like a tree trunk, right? So those rings are from years and years of its being basically. So the ego is like that, okay? It kind of takes on your experiences as you live your life. Okay. All right. The third ego state is your adult ego state. Okay. So adult ego state does not have any duality. Okay. It doesn't have two opposite aspects. Okay. It is basically you experience your reality right now. Okay. Here and now, this moment, this present moment, as things are happening right now. So if you are able to respond to it, normally, basically you encountering something, okay, and your response or your basically how you react right now, okay, this moment, that's basically your adult ego state. Okay. However, normally what people tend to do is something happens, okay, then their programming starts to play, okay, then they starts to react from previous programming from their ego states, other ego states. Okay. So if you normally the adult ego state tends to be rational, okay, logical and emotionally intelligent. You tend to do what is right, okay, okay. So you look at a different things, different a aspect of the same thing. If the event is happening, you look at a different aspect of that event and try to make the right decision rather than reacting from your a parent ego state or from your child ego state. Okay, so I assume you have some idea about different ego states. So all of these states, ego states, make up your ego, your self-identity. All right. So think about since you guys are in the IT field, so think about a codes. These ego states are like a bunch of codes in your operating system. Okay, so when something happens, this is a trigger. These these programming codes are triggered, and you would react to that event based on how you experience your life. Okay, what happened to you, in your childhood, what happened to you growing up, and so on. Right? That's why not everyone reacts to the same thing in the same manner. Okay. Okay, so these are some of the attributes of different ego states. Okay, so for positive, for parents' ego state, depending on how the child or how you grew up, okay, in your family, in your childhood, you could have the loving and caring parent ego state, okay, or you could have a judgmental, critical, very authoritative, demeaning parent ego state. Okay, so this is a reflection from how your parents actually treated your childhood. Okay, so some of the attributes of adult ego state is basically looking at different aspects like using facts, using data, logic. Basically, you're not overcome by emotions. Okay, so if you're confronted with some difficult situation, you try to look at all the things that could be contributing to that, and then only you come to a decision that would be kind of congruent to not only good for you, but maybe good for others as well. So you tend to look at all this aspect when you are in your adult ego state, when you are in here and now at this moment, okay, unaffected by your childhood or unaffected by your previous experiences. Okay, of course, when I say previous experiences, maybe you want to use your experience in a sense if you want to make a decision, okay, so you want to make your decision could be your previous experience, handling similar situations. So you may want to use those experience, but you don't want to use the emotional aspect, you don't want to use that the how your parents behave or how you behave during your childhood and all that. Okay, so that's the adult ego state. So of course you want to use your experience and knowledge and all that. Okay, but not the scripts that or not the programming that shaped your previous self. Okay. All right. So some of the attributes of child ego state, okay, it could be positive, very exciting, okay. You tend to have a very jolly personality, okay. You tend to take everything with a very enthusiasm and all that, Okay, and on the flip side, on the negative side, if your childhood, you spend your childhood like maybe like not so good. You tend to disagree a lot with others. You tend to see like negative things about others. Okay, you tend to brag and twist the truth and so on. Okay, so these are some of the manifestations that happened during your childhood. Okay, so if you so now, okay, so you are like familiar with the different ego states within possibly within you. Okay, so now if you can catch yourself playing that code, that programming code, when you encounter one of the like a when an event triggers one of these ego states, now maybe you can be more adult in an adult ego state. You can experience now and here, this moment, and catch yourself not give into those programming codes. You can, let's say, stop the execution of the programming code. You can, let's say, press some key. I'm just giving like an analogy to computer, okay? And basically look at yourself. How are you behaving? And see if you can change your behavior. See if you can behave a little differently, more rationally. Okay, more maybe that would be good for others as well. Okay, okay, all right. Okay, so let's look at some transaction pairs. Okay, so when two people are basically communicating or interacting, okay, so their ego states come to play. Okay, so let's say I'm talking to one of you guys. Okay, so I may be interacting in my parent ego state, and because you picture me as your teacher, okay, so you may be interacting with your child ego state. Okay, so we'll look at like different transactional pairs. Okay, so you have three different ego states within you. I have three different ego states within me. Okay, so depending on which ego state interacts with which ego state in you, okay, it could be one of the three transaction pairs. Okay, so the first transaction pairs is a complementary transaction pairs. Okay, so these transaction pairs are stable transaction pairs that tend to go on for for a relatively long time period. Okay, so these are basically if you have, let's say you have three ego states within you: parent, adult, child ego states. Okay, so let's say you are interacting with your friend, your classmates. Okay, so your classmate can also interact using one of those three ego states. Okay, all right, so it can be, let's say, adult, 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 child, and child, child, and so on. Okay, so these are the complementary transaction pairs. So these tends to go on for a long time. Okay, so these are stable transaction pairs. Okay, so you can imagine like meeting your classmates for the first time. Okay, you didn't know what to expect and so on. So after interacting with your classmate for a while, maybe few days, maybe few weeks, okay, you are kind of like how you presented during those initial stays. Okay, that tend to shape your relationship with basically other people now. Okay, you may like a replay. You may kind of like a see that right now. Your relationship with your friends, maybe your maybe seniors and so on, the basically how you presented yourself, or how in the communication or interaction. So if you're, let's say, between you and some other person, if you both were in like, let's say, child ego states, okay, you may see like you're still kind of replaying those ego states if you analyze it. Okay, so regardless, again, depending on whom you interact, which person, again, the same person may interact with different people in different complementary transaction pairs. Okay, so when you talk with your parents, maybe you would be, kind of interacting with your child ego state, but your parent may be interacting with with his or her, like the parent ego state. Or now that you are like grown up, okay, maybe you also you interact with adult ego state, and your parent also interact with adult ego state, or maybe still kind of like interact with you guys with their parent ego state. Okay, so these tend to go on for a relatively long period of time. Okay, these are stable transaction pairs. The other type, the second type of transaction pairs, it's called ulterior transaction. Okay, so in this type of transaction, ego transaction pairs, so on the surface, it may look like they are like interacting in a complementary pair. Okay, so from outside, the communication is going on back and forth, or the interaction is going on. Okay, but inwardly, okay, so one of the people or both have the ulterior motive, or there's ulterior ego state playing underneath the surface. Okay, so above the surface, okay, it's one of those transaction pairs. So beneath, one or both are trying to play a different ego state. For example, if let's say you meet your senior, like a student from senior batch, okay, from third year student, you interact with that student, okay. So on the surface, you are interacting. Let's say because you are a junior student, when you interacted with your friend, you took the initially you took, like, let's say you took the child ego state. Let's say, I'm just giving you an example. Okay, so him or her, being a third year student, that person took the parent ego state. Okay, but you really didn't want to be don't want to be in the child ego state. So ulteriorly, you wanted to be in, let's say, parent ego state. Okay, so but that is not happening on the surface. On the surface, you are interacting with that person in like a child and parent ego state, but inwardly, you really don't want to continue that transaction. So that is why this ulterior transaction pair is not stable. Okay, it can't go on for a long time. So maybe during that interaction period, okay, so that went on, but after that you don't feel comfortable even meeting with that person again, because your ego state doesn't like to be subjugated to that. Okay, so maybe the solution could be that like present to yourself, to the other person, in the ego state that you want to be taken by the other person. Okay, so if you want to be treated in the adult, I mean in the adult ego state or parent ego state, so basically initiate the transaction in that ego state. Okay, so your further transactions would not fall back to what was before. Okay, that could or could not happen depending on the other person and you. Okay, you both are the active participant in this transaction, in this communication, in this interaction. Okay, so again, ulterior transaction, you're not satisfied inwardly, but outwardly you're kind of like you're not showing to the other person. Maybe because you don't want the other person to see. Maybe you're kind of scared, like what the other person may say, and so on. Okay, so it could be any reason. Okay, so the ulterior transaction is not stable. Okay, all right. The third transaction pair is the cross transaction. Okay, so let's say you want to interact with the other person in more like adult ego state. Okay, so you're talking with your classmate. Okay, so however, your classmate, depending on how, like your friends, like ego state, or your friends early, like a childhood experiences and so on. So when you initiated the conversation with your classmate, that person kind of like initiated in a different ego state, maybe in a child ego state. So you were trying to interact in like adult ego state. Okay, but what you got was a child ego state. Okay, so that is also not stable. Okay, so after you have interacted with that person, you kind of feel kind of weird. Okay, why is that person behaving like that? Or could be something else. All right, so when you're interact, like transaction pair, like your expectation is not met. Okay, you wanted to communicate, or you wanted to interact in one ego state. Okay, but the other person did not fulfill that ego state. So that is cross transaction transaction pairs. All right, so these are again like a different ego states that comes to play when you interact, when you communicate with other people. So now, before this, you may not have this idea, but you try to notice that with the other person when you interact with other people now. Okay, and see how the other person presents himself or herself to you. Okay, and you kind of like see how that person grew up, maybe, okay, depending on the situation, of course. Okay, and you can kind of have this idea about this ego states that's kind of interacting between you and the other person. Outwardly, you are interacting with your friend. Okay, of course, that friend has a name. Okay, that all the features. But inwardly, when it comes to ego state, you may be able to recognize if that friend is displaying or playing that adult ego state script or programming, parent ego state programming, or child ego state programming. Okay, you can try it next time when you are interacting with other people. All right. So again, these are some of the complementary transaction pairs. So you have like a 3 different ego states. All right, so you can have that many combinations. All right, and these are the stable transaction pairs. So ulterior transaction, okay. So you are interacting in one ego state, okay, but inwardly, one or both the people who are interacting, who are communicating, they don't want to be in that ego state, okay. So maybe you want to prove yourself better. You want to prove yourself, like a boss, as a boss. So even though you are interacting in one transaction pair, so inwardly, you have your ulterior, that motive within you. Okay, so that's an example. So again, you see the arrow between like adult and adult here. It can be other ego states as well. Again, I'm just giving you the example here. So this is cross transaction pair. Okay, so you wanted to initiate like adult. Again, this is an example. Okay, it can be other ego states as well. So you wanted to initiate. So let's say you are a sender here. S means sender, R means receiver. Okay, so you wanted to initiate an interaction where you wanted to basically communicate in adult ego states. Okay, but after communicating, after interacting with the other person, you found that the other person is kind of playing the child ego state programming. Okay, so then you'll have to revert to maybe like parent, maybe your like a parent ego state come to play. Okay, so you kind of like a cross, like you kind of establish into another ego state. So initially you wanted to establish one ego state pair. Then what happens is after the communication has started, then you guys settled into another ego states. Okay, so you can see this happening in your life as well. Okay, you meet a new person. That person may be like a kind of like a like a not that mature, maybe like a 20 years old, but because of his or her life experience, okay, that person went through a lot. Okay, so maybe after interacting with that person, you change that ego state. You feel like, okay, that person has so much to basically share, or that person has learned so much. Okay, so that ego state may change. Okay, initially something, then later on it reverts to something else. So that's a cross transaction pair. Okay, so let's look at communication levels. Okay, so communication may have 2 different basically meanings. Okay, so one is the literal meaning of message, and one is the psychological message. Okay, so the literal message is basically what is being said. Okay, so it is like the word for word of what is being said. Okay, for example, if you hear like you remind me of my ex-wife. Okay, so you could like get the message saying, it could mean that you know basically you resemble that person's ex-wife. Okay, that's the one-to-one meaning. A message can have also psychological meaning. Okay, so it could be the true meaning of, or it could be what the person meant. Okay, for example, the same sentence, you remind me of my ex-wife. Okay, so it could mean that that person didn't have a good wife. Okay, so that person had a very mean or control freak wife. So in a sense, he meant that you are like that, but you took as something else. Okay, so there is a psychological message, then there's a literal message. Okay, so in a sense, the psychological message is that subliminal message. Okay, all right. So there is a video where it talks about different ego states. Okay.